Right, in this video we're going to have a look at setting up some ambient sounds into our level. We've got this little barrel on fire, so we're going to add an attenuated sound, which means a sound that has a distance applied to it. In the next video we're going to have a look at setting up some triggered sounds using Kismet. We've got this little door which animates, so we'll trigger some sounds through that. We're also going to have a look at using reverb volume to isolate sounds to specific parts of the map. So if we had a wind sound effect on the outside of this room, when we go inside the room we don't want to hear it, we go outside the room and we can hear the wind again. So for this one we're going to set up the attenuated sound on the barrel, and we're going to set up an ambient wind sound which we can hear everywhere on the level. So we're going to have a look in the content browser for this one. There it is. And what we're looking for is actually sound wave data. Now if you don't see sound wave data on your favorites list, I'll remove it from mine. Just go into all types, scroll down until you see sound wave data. It's all in alphabetical order, and just right click and add to your favorites, and then you'll see it there on your favorites list. If ever you want to remove anything, just right click and remove from favorites. So we'll click on sound wave data, and we're going to look for fire. So we'll type in fire, and you can double click on any of these sounds to play them and hear them. The sound effect that I'm going to use is the fire small. I think I'll just use that one, so I'll double click. And we'll highlight it in the content browser, so it's got the yellow outline around it. And when we want to place it, we can just right click, and you've got different types of ambient sound that you can add in. So an ambient sound simple is a sound effect that will loop continuously, and you've got an ambient sound non-looping, which will just play through the 3.69 seconds that this sound wave data is using. And you've got an ambient sound non-looping toggleable, which is an ambient sound which doesn't loop and you can toggle it. And you've got an ambient sound simple toggleable, which is an ambient sound which you can toggle. In other words, you can turn it off. But we want our ambient sound to loop all of the time, and we don't need to toggle it, so we're going to add in an ambient sound simple. Click on that and we can add it in. There's our sound wave. I'm just going to position it where the source of the sound is actually coming from, in other words the fire. And we're going to have a look in the 4 viewports. Don't worry about that glitching, that's because I'm using the Oculus version of the Unreal Dev Kit. It's got a few minor problems in the editor. Alright, so you can see what we've got here is 2 circles around the sound wave data node. If I zoom out on here, you can see that those circles are actually spheres. Now these spheres are the attenuation of the sound, in other words how far the sound can travel. So if I press F4 while I've got my sound node selected, and I'll just close these down so you can see what we've got going on here. If you open up ambient sound simple and attenuation, you've got 2 options here for attenuate and spatialize. Attenuate basically means that the further away you get from the source of the sound, it gradually gets quieter, and spatialize basically enables the sound to be positioned in 3D. We've also got these 2 values here, which we're not going to use for this one, but we've got radius and minimum, radius minimum, radius maximum. And this basically controls, the distance that the sound can travel. So the inner circle is the radius minimum, and the outer circle is the radius max. So the radius min, it doesn't matter if the player is just inside that inner circle or right in the center of the inner circle, they're going to hear the sound 100% when they're inside that inner circle. And then as they go from just on the outside of the inner circle towards the outer circle, it'll gradually fall off from 100% volume until you just get outside, and it'll reach 0% volume. Now this sound's traveling a little bit too far for this particular kind of sound, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that radius minimum from 2000 to 200, and you can see that inner circle is shrank right down now, so the player basically has to be very, very close to this sound to be able to hear it at 100% volume. I'm going to take my radius maximum and turn that down to, let's say, 1000, and now the maximum distance that this sound can travel has been shortened dramatically. So let's test it out and see what it sounds like in the level. So I'll just right click and play from here, and I'm going to have to move this over, so I'll just drag this window. There we go. And at the moment we can't hear the sound, but as we get gradually closer and closer, we can hear the sound louder and louder and louder, and of course as you move further away, that sound gradually falls off till we can't hear it anymore. Alright, so we've got that one sorted. The next thing to do would be to add in an ambient sound just for the sort of general atmosphere of the level. So for that I'm going to bring the content browser back over, and if you wanted to, you could just type in the word ambient, as long as you spell it correctly, and you can find all sorts of different ambient sounds that you can use, building shakes, bird sounds, all sorts of stuff. I'm just going to look for a wind sound, and there's various different wind sound files that we can use. I'm just going to use the first one that I grabbed there, which is air_window6, and I'm going to drag that into the level. Now we want this particular sound to be heard across the entire level equally, so we're not going to rely on the radius for this. Now, you'd be tempted to think, right, I'm just going to make the radius minimum big enough to cover my entire level, but you don't actually need to do that. I'm just going to press F4 to open up its properties, and for this I'm going to turn off attenuate and I'm going to turn off spatialize, which means that this sound is no longer attenuated by the distance, and it doesn't have a specific location in 3D space. Just to prove this to you, I'm going to set the radius minimum and maximum down to 20, so it basically doesn't have a radius, and the player would effectively have to be stood right on top of that sound node to hear it. But because we've turned off attenuate and we've turned off spatialize, you can hear this sound everywhere. So if I just play from here, drag the window over so you can see it, and you can hear the wind sound everywhere in the level equally, and it works with our attenuated fire sound as well, so we can still hear that, and we've got the wind everywhere. Now we've got this door here, which opens up and closes via a trigger using Kismet. If we go inside this room, we can still hear the wind and we can still hear the fire, which is a bit of an issue. So in the next video, we're going to have a look at setting up a reverb volume inside of this room so that we can't hear the wind in here and we can't hear the fire inside either. We're also going to have a look at setting up a sound for this door as well, because at the minute it's very quiet. In fact, it's silent. So that's what we're going to do next. Alright, okay, that's it for this one, guys. I hope it's been useful, and I'll see you next time.